Ah boy, do I love the Spiderverse. But it's still months away until the next movie, and I can't just sit around and wait for it. I wonder if there's any other Spiderverse content out there. Okay, Spider Noir, nothing. Penny Parker, nothing. Spider Ham, nothing. Oh, Spider Gwen. That should come up with something. Oh my gosh. What is this? No, get it away from me. Why would people make this? This is sick! Ah! The Spiderverse comic came out in 2014 and was written by Stan Slott. Now this series was hype back in the day with a full story about nothing but an entire multiverse of Spider-Man. This seemed like it would be a smash hit, and it was. But today I plan on looking back and seeing how this story matches up to the incredibly popular Spider-Verse movie. I mean, it has to be better or as good as the movie. I mean, it inspired the entire movie. But let's find out, starting with...
Are you serious?
Before I started this section of the video, I wanted to proclaim that this first section is the prequels, and that this is the lead up to the main Spider-Verse story. This means that these first issues are going to be of all different shapes and sizes, and I will make note of all those different shapes and sizes. That definitely made me sound fat-phobic, but anyway, back to your regularly scheduled program.
Pizza time.
The cover for this first issue, to me, is very basic. Don't get me wrong, while the Spider-Man Noir is very cool, this cover doesn't really do much else. Especially considering this isn't even the first cover appearance of Spider-Man Noir. This cover just doesn't do enough to get me interested in it. The story starts out in New York, and the year is 1939, with people observing a Spider-Man living during this time. Then we cut to Peter Benjamin Parker, as he is at the World's Fair with Aunt May and Mary Jane, who seems to be acting differently ever since she went to war. So in order to cheer her up and see her smile, Peter decides to take her to a new popular magician named Mysterio. I think we can all see where this is going. At the show, Mysterio does a trick where he tries to escape a water tank where in 3 minutes the tank will be electrocuted. While Peter is watching him perform the trick, his spider sense begins to go off, but he doesn't know why. Meanwhile, with the trick still going on, it looks like Mysterio isn't going to make it, but he miraculously escapes somehow. Peter and his family are amazed and wonder how he was able to pull off the trick because it doesn't seem plausible. Meanwhile, with Mysterio backstage, he begins to tell his assistant that he needs Spider-Man's blood in order to gain his powers and become the new kingpin of crime by taking out Wilson Fisk. He does this by interrogating one of the last known members of the Goblin's gang in order to find out how Spider-Man gained his powers and the location of Felicia Hardy, otherwise known as the Black Cat of this universe. Mysterio and Wilson Fisk go to confront Felicia, and they find that she is wearing a mask because her face was disfigured after the last person who wanted to know the truth of Spider-Man. Since Mysterio knows they can't do anything to make her talk, they instead decide to hold her hostage in order to bring Spider-Man to them. Peter finds this out by reading in the newspaper that they will kill Felicia if he does not sacrifice his blood to them. So Spider-Man decides to go save her. However, when he gets there and starts to fight them, he finds out that Mysterio has a hallucinogen gas, and that's how he did his impossible trick earlier. This gas allows Mysterio to take Spider-Man hostage. He puts Spider-Man in a case and he takes his blood. He then closes the case and it slowly starts to fill with water. In order to survive drowning, Spider-Man uses his webs to make a mask that holds enough oxygen to allow him to regain his strength and escape. He then is easily able to take down Mysterio. However, even though he has defeated Mysterio, his spider sense still hasn't gone away, meaning that Mysterio wasn't the real threat. As Spider-Noir is thinking this, a man transports into the room and says he is going to kill him. However, before he gets the chance, another Spider-Man shows up and teleports him away. Then Felicia escapes with the blood that Mysterio stole. Meanwhile, Spider-Noir is transported to the year 2089 with more Spider-Men surrounding the two. While I did find the main plot for this issue interesting, I felt as if it was missing some previous plot details. This may be due to the fact that there had been multiple Spider-Noir books before this series came out, and that some of the details for those books were put into this issue, which I wouldn't have a problem with, but I wish they had explained some of that better. Like, they went nowhere with the Mary Jane went to war, and what happened to Black Cat in the past? However, some of this may be revealed in future issues since I am writing these reviews as I am actively reading them. So if you're writing in the comments that it is revealed 20 issues from now, I haven't gotten there yet.
Peter, may I introduce my father, Norman Osborn?
Heard so much about you.
Great honor to meet you, sir.
Harry tells me you're quite the science whiz. You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
I really like this cover, especially considering that Gwen as a Spider-Man wasn't necessarily anything that had been seen prominently in the comics at this point. Also, the design of Gwen's costume is so good. It looks exactly like what Gwen would wear as a Spider comic. The only problem I would say I have with it is that the Gwen stuff only takes up part of the page, and the rest of it is really just negative space with not too much to look at. Overall, a pretty good cover though. The story starts out with Gwen and Mary Jane playing in their band when Gwen gets bit by a spider and we all of a sudden get sent to a previously on panel. In this panel, we find out that her cop father hates Spider-Woman. We also find out that Peter Parker hates being less special than Gwen, so he ends up turning himself into the Lizard. When Gwen stops him, Peter ends up dying in the process, and Gwen becomes an outlaw for the murder of Peter Parker, and that brings us to today. We see that Gwen is having trouble dealing with the guilt after the death of her friend. While on a run one night as the Spider-Woman, she runs into a cop who wants to arrest her. He tries to shoot at her recklessly, but ends up getting webbed up and humiliated by her instead. Then she ends up having to run from the police. While this is happening, we see that Matt Murdock is hiring a bounty hunter to take out Gwen's dad, who has been stalking Spider-Woman, thinking this is going to help Spider-Woman. While this is going on, Gwen is late for her band's gig and hurriedly gets dressed for it. However, as she gets out there, she sees the bounty hunter about to take out her dad. While her dad protects himself, she gets her spider costume on and goes to protect him. After a quick battle, she subdues the assassin and her dad ends up cornering her. With nothing left to do, she decides to take off her mask and reveal her identity to her dad. She explains to him that she put on this mask initially to free herself from responsibility, but after she lost Peter, she realized that the mask was a responsibility to make his death mean something. After her dad hears this, he allows her to go free. While this is happening, a mysterious Spider-Man is seen watching her from the ceiling. I really enjoyed this issue. Clearly giving an original character a brand new story made it way easier to follow because the character didn't already have established lore. They also made this character super relatable to the people who feel alone out there, even though they have friends and family. Also, the fact that they made Peter her Uncle Ben was absolutely genius. I hope that they do end up expanding her story more throughout the event. I also like that they are slowly building up this multiverse thing at the end of each story, allowing the story to conclude first. Overall, a really fun issue. The cover for this one is just plain and boring. It doesn't do anything to get me interested in the story at all, other than it is a robotic version of the normal Spider-Man suit. Hopefully the story can do more to keep me interested. The story starts out with a scientist named Aaron Eichmann, who is a specialist in venom. He ends up testing on himself and gains the powers of Spider-Man. He ends up using these powers for good, using his immense intellect in order to upgrade himself and take down bad guys. However, there has been a bad guy recently known as Namora. This villain has been able to take down Spider-Man and kidnap hundreds of victims. But Spider-Man uses his lab during the night in order to upgrade his silk in order to trap Namora. This is going on while in Eichmann's personal life he met a woman named Ikigami. Her daughter was hit by a car and Eichmann was helping her find a way to bring her back from a vegetative state. While doing this, they both fell in love. However, one day she left him saying she no longer wanted his help with her daughter. We then cut back to his lab as he's working on his spider outfit. This is when someone comes knocking at the door. This ends up being Ikigami, who came here to run away with Eichmann. Eichmann, happy to see her embrace, says that he loves her, but they have to stay here and deal with their problem. She seems to become distant again after this and runs away. After this encounter, he puts his plan into action and heads after Namora. He ends up finding her, and after a long battle, he is finally able to defeat her. However, he finds out that this is actually one of the victims that Namora has taken. After this, they find on the victims' bodies that they were actually being controlled by some sort of bioengineered neural interface. After seeing this, Eichmann immediately connects this back to Aikigami. He goes to see her, where she explains that shortly after she left, she finally brought her daughter back, but something seemed to have taken over her shortly after. After this, she has been following its every order, and now every victim is a part of its army, and its first attack is tonight. Spider-Man, realizing what is about to happen, runs and tries to stop it. However, before he can reach the end of the hallway, he is stopped by a mysterious figure and is suddenly killed. What this story lacks in character for this Spider-Man, it definitely makes up for in story. It is interesting to see the mystery play out throughout the issue, and reveal at the end leaves me intrigued with where they are going with this. Hi, this is Micah after he finished reading this, and I just want to say this story never goes anywhere. The actual villains are never actually able to control humans like they do in this story, so basically this story was absolutely useless, and it was pretty dumb because of that. Anyway, bye.
I'm gonna throw you out the window now.
The cover for this one is cool, but the retro look does not give this story justice. Trust me. The story starts out with a more weirdo version of Peter Parker, who likes to experiment on bugs and peep on Mary Jane. He got that W wrist. He says in his head that he's never actually talked to MJ before until one day she decides to sit down and talk to him. She says that the science lab that they are going to today experiments on animals and then kills them, and she says she wants to stop that. Peter, of course, agrees, this being his major crush and all. When they get to the lab, someone starts bullying Peter until MJ stands up for him. The two start walking together until MJ pulls Peter away from the group to go save some of the animals. While they try to grab as many animals as they can, Peter ends up getting bit by a spider. They both end up getting in trouble and sent home. The next day, while at home, Peter is feeling major nausea and is lying on his bed. His uncle comes in and tells him he has to go to school because he doesn't want to deal with him at all. So he decides to beat him as medicine. However, he stays at home anyway and finds that he's having trouble eating anything. This is until he sees a rat in a trap and something inside him tells him to eat it. After he eats it, he notices that he feels stronger and that he has grown fangs as well. He begins to realize that the more he eats of living flesh, the more powerful he feels. So that night, when his uncle comes home, he decides to eat him alive. The next day, he goes to school and he begins to realize that if he doesn't eat, then he will lose his power. So he eats a pigeon as a snack, and then he challenges the bully from earlier to a fight. And I think we all know how that is going to go down. He continues to sneak people away to kill them when he sees a kid looking for his dog, and he says he has it at his house. Later that evening, MJ comes over asking about the bully that he ate earlier, and they begin talking when he kisses her, and while kissing her, he then bites her. She hits him, revealing a hideous spider creature under her. She runs around and he begins to chase her until she finds his feeding room. Peter is about to get MJ when a mysterious figure shows up at the door. He begins to say he could smell him from across the multiverse and had to get a taste. Then he begins to what looks like sucking the soul out of him while MJ runs away. The next day, MJ tries to convince herself that it was just a dream, but as she looks at the bite mark on her neck, thousands of spiders begin to come out of it. I loved this story. Like I said, the cover does not give this story justice. I could see this one day becoming a Spider-Man horror movie, much like Brightburn. The story and characters were all super interesting, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I do think the guy who just walked in the door at the end was a little bit shoved in, but I understand it for the story. Overall, a great and horrifying story.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
This cover is fairly boring. For the Spider-Man and Spider-Verse to have been hammered with the anime look, I'm surprised they didn't make it look like that here. Because to me, this just looks like Robot Spider-Man. And that isn't even original to this series. Hopefully the story is more colorful than this cover. The story starts out with a man falling from an explosion in a spider robot suit, and he has apparently died. Then we cut to a little girl named Penny being told that her father has died, and that due to genetics she has to take the mantle of the spider. She is then psychically bonded to the spider that allows her to connect to the suit. We shoot 5 years in the future where a villain called Mysterio is giving people a poisonous hallucinogenic gas. So Penny in her spider suit jumps in to stop him. She gets inside the fear he is in, but gets hit with an overload of the fumes. She is then told to psychically connect to the spider so she can see through the robot's eyes. After she does this, she is easily able to punch Mysterio. We then find out that he was just a mega fan of Spider and wanted her to notice him. The next day, she is called out of class by Daredevil, and they were told they were given a tip-off by Mysterio about a bunch of gangs. So they both go to punch up some bad guys. After they do this, Penny says she is not going to take her suit home, but take the train. When she is on the train, none other than Spider-Ham and another Spider-Man show up to recruit her to stop someone from killing all the Spider-Men in the multiverse. She agrees and grabs her suit and gets ready for action. Yeah, I was not feeling this one. The story was bland and the art didn't have that anime style I was hoping for. I would say it was an origin story, but it wasn't really that. In fact, it wasn't really a story at all. It's sad that the most entertaining part of your story is the teaser at the end of the main story. This is sad considering how Penny Parker was in the Spider-Verse movie. I was excited to see how she was in the comics. Let's hope she's better in the main story. Hi, future Micah again. I just want to say she's not in the main story, like, at all. I honestly, like, she's a background character. She got a whole comic to herself just to be a background character in the main story. At least she's in the movie, though. But, like, how they decided to choose her is beyond me, because this person, based on how they showed her in the story, would have been my last pick. Anyway, on to the next one. I Want to Die.
Thank you, Miss Parker, for having me. And thank you guys for having me.
The story is about a Renaissance Spider-Man getting eaten by Morlun, which is the name of the man who's been killing Spider-Man. I'm doing this one fast because I have a lot more of these to go through.
I have a 9-year-old daughter who loves Spider-Man. Who's she supposed to look up to now?
This is the guy that gave the key to the city to?
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
I feel like for the cover of this one, they could have done a better job of showing that he was in Spider-Man 2099's Earth, because based on what we see in this cover, it isn't as visually interesting as I would have hoped. I mean, I've seen what Spider-Man 2099's Earth can look like, and this is not it. Man, these Spider-Verse covers have been really disappointing so far. Hopefully they get better, though. The story starts out with Superior Spider-Man, which is the mind of Dr. Octavius inside the body of Peter Parker. Don't ask. It's a long story. Superior Spider-Man has been caught in the middle of an implosion due to a temporal energy meltdown. The implosion was caused because of Spider-Man 2099 messing with the timeline and coming to his timeline. Because of this, when Superior Spider-Man gets caught in the implosion, it sends him to Spider-Man 2099's timeline to replace the one that left. When he gets there, he instantly starts thinking of ways to escape. These thoughts are interrupted by him being chased down by the police, but instead of doing what Spider-Man 2099 would do, he instead attacks the police. He is then picked up by Spider-Man 2099's brother. He remembers Peter from the last time he got stuck in this timeline, but Octavius doesn't remember that since he took Peter's body. However, he is able to convince 2099's brother to give him a lab so he can find a way back home. Along with this, he is given Virtual Assistant to help him with his work. Through the Virtual Assistants, Octavius learns of a temporal energy generator that allows him to travel back to his world, so he begins to steal the materials he needs to create this generator. When he eventually creates this generator, he goes through it hoping to get back to his world. However, he ends up on an Earth where Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four. However, Spider-Man is dead. Octavius goes back and forth to Earth after Earth, with each one having a dead Spider-Man in it with the same wound. After this, we cut to another Spider-Man on Earth running away from the thing that has apparently been killing all these Spider-Men. The Spider-Man runs as much as he can, but eventually the creature is about to kill him, but Octavius comes through a portal and saves him. He then offers the Spider-Man a chance to join a team to stop this creature killing all the Spider-Men, and he agrees. When they get back to the future, we find out that this isn't the only Spider-Man he picked up. Oh, also in the backup, he picks up a Spider-Man who also kills. Not much else happened. This issue was actually pretty awesome. Other than a lengthy start, once it got to the Spider-Verse stuff, it got pretty cool. And finding out who saved Spider-Noir in the first issue was cool too. Hopefully the next one builds upon this issue to be even better. Finally, a cover that has more than just one Spider-Man on the front standing and or jumping off a building. Also, this one actually builds upon what we have seen in a previous. It's not the best cover because it's kind of bland, but it is one of the best we have gotten so far. The story starts out with the Hunter from the last issue chasing down a Spider-Man. He eventually catches up to him and is able to stab him. However, this is a cyborg Spider-Man, and he's able to catch the Hunter off guard right as Superior Spider-Man and his team come through a portal to attack. They end up subduing him by reversing the energy that strengthens him. However, they only end up being able to subdue him for a moment as he ends up escaping. They begin fighting with him, but it seems to be of no use. And to make matters worse, two more hunters who seem to be related to him come out of a portal. They end up on the verge of losing, but they are able to trick them into fighting with each other and end up running through a portal back to 2099's Earth. When they get back, they feel all the effects of the loss they just endured. However, Octavius tells them to monitor history and the multiverse for these hunters. Meanwhile, he stays back to tell the Spider-Men who kill that when it comes down to it, one of them will have to do what needs to be done. Meanwhile, in the back issue, the hunter with the mask is fighting a monster spider totem. As they begin to lose, he remembers how he got in this situation. Him and the rest of his family were in a fight against the Master Weaver. When fighting him, he ends up the only one who can strike him, but he hesitates, and his mother goes for the attack but dies in the process. Eventually, the rest of the family defeat the Master Weaver and chain him up to control the multiverse. However, the father, not being able to look at his son's face, welds this mask to his face and exiles him to the multiverse. While thinking about this, it gives him the motivation to kill the monstrous spider and take his power. This issue was way better than the last one, with it being able to have more multiversal fun with all the different Spider-Men fighting throughout the battle. Also, we got more lore for these hunters with the main story and the back issue. It does leave me with a lot of questions of where this is going from here, but I'm excited to see what happens next.
How's the pie?
So good.
I really like the cover for this one. The realistic look of it makes it seem like it would be a variant cover for a DC comic. And the shattered glass really makes the Spider-Verse theme apparent. Overall, really solid cover. The story starts out with Spider-Man 2099 with the Avengers having the uneasy feeling that someone is watching him. He of course ends up being right, and one of the hunters is there to kill him. The Avengers try to protect him but end up failing, with Spider-Man 2099 losing his life to the hunter. I don't remember when I started calling these guys hunters, and I'm too lazy to go back and fix all the times I didn't, so I'm just putting this note in here for people who are confused. After this, we cut to Spider-Man 2099. Okay, I'm just calling him 2099 from now on, because saying Spider-Man 2099 every time I say that name gets annoying. Anyway, Spider-Man 2099 of Earth 616 seems to be feeling the effects of the other 2099's death. But like the Chad he just calls it a bad headache and keeps fighting bad guys. Meanwhile, back in the universe where the hunter was finishing off 2099, he sees another 2099 spying on him through a portal. That 2099 ends up closing the portal, with it seeming to be a 2099 from the Earth where he joined the Exiles. Which, I have no idea who they are, so moving on, I guess. I looked it up, and it just seems that they are a bunch of multiversal problem solvers with various characters from different universes, which covers up the plot thread there, but did I really need to look it up? No, I did not. So this 2099 explains that he needs to head to Earth 616, which is the only place in the multiverse where this hunter has died before. Meanwhile, 2099's secret identity is continuing to be stricken with headaches from other universes. By the way, I didn't mention this before, but the Exile's 2099 has a sweat veil that allows him to see all the other 2099s who have been killed by these hunters. After experiencing the headaches some more, he decides to go to the roof to get into costume. But as he is doing this, the Exile 29 comes through a portal to meet him. However, it seems to be too late as the hunter has already reached him, killing him. Then 29 looks up at the hunter and sees that he seems to be afraid of this earth. I mean, this issue did answer a few questions, but it feels like we are spending way too much time on this setup stuff. Like, we've gone through almost 10 issues and still the main story hasn't even started yet. Let's hope we can finally get a start to this event in the next issue. Future Micah here. After reading these, we don't get started. We still have 2 more. Also, I just want to say something. Another critique I didn't add in here. Why does the story just end all of a sudden? Like, we never see how he ends up traveling the multiverse. Because later on, spoiler alert, 2099 ends up, like, going to other Earths and recruiting people to get Spider-Man to stop everyone from dying. But it doesn't make sense here. Because he never gets a device that allows him to do that. Actually, yeah. So it just doesn't make sense. Like, why did this didn't even need to be here? Other than be like, ooh, the only important detail from this was that the one dude is afraid of Earth because he's died here. Which I'm pretty sure if you read the Amazing Spider-Man comics of this time, it would have told you the same thing. But whatever. Next issue. I'm wasting enough time on this rant anyway.
The deal is off if you come with it. The board expects your resignation in 30 days.
But you can't do this to me. I started this company. You know how much...
The main story has nothing to do with the Spider-Verse, but at the beginning of this issue, Silk says, "Great, not only can't I find my family, but now I can't find Netscape." Like, girl, those are 2 drastically different things that you shouldn't be talking about so casually. Anyway, the cover is boring and has nothing to do with the part of the story that is important. The backstory is about the British Spider-Man and how he finds out about the hunters, and while trying to talk to a multiversal council about it, is told that his problem isn't important. This is until a different councilman says it is important and gives him a device to travel the universe. That's the story, and it's just more setup. Moving on.
Stings, doesn't it?
Protected you in high school, now I'm gonna kick your little...
I love how the cover for this one knows that you're here to read the Spider-Verse story, with the main story getting a small part of the cover for this. My only problem with the cover is that it doesn't look like the actual character in the book. The backstory has Mayday Parker, who is the daughter of Peter Parker, fighting for her life against a totem. No, it's against a hunter. I'm an idiot. Okay, I'm just gonna leave this blooper in here as the joke. I'm funny. Her father comes in to distract the hunter while Mayday and her brother run out of the house. When they get out of there, a bunch of Spider-Men jump out of a portal and tell them to come with them, with Mayday Parker vowing to break her vow and kill this creature. I really like this story. Mayday Parker seemed like an interesting character that I hope we get to see more of in the main Spider-Verse story, if we ever get to it. Future Micah here. You know how I say I hope we get more of the main Spider-Verse, her in the more main... Well, she's not in it that much. She's mostly not in it. She has some good parts in it later on. We'll talk about those later because those are actually really nice parts and what I would have liked more. But she's not in it much, and it sucks because this is one of the interesting characters in it. Anyway, next is the main story, so let's get on with it.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm! Wait. Everybody calm down!
We've now reached the main story after a long and drawn-out journey. Now, a few things to know before we start this section of the video. First, I will not be going over the side comics of this story. 2, this is mainly due to the fact that the graphic novel I bought digitally shows the main story first, then the side comics. Why it does this? Don't ask me. Anyway, if you wanted me to go over the side comics, I may make an extended cut of this video or a Spider-Verse side comic video in the future. But until then, back to your regularly scheduled program.
Now dig
I am so glad that the main story has actually started and that with it we are finally getting some really cool covers. This one is super iconic, being the face of most of the Spider-Verse and probably the thumbnail of this video, not currently done at the moment while making this video. I do wish they used some cooler looking Spider-Man because the ones they choose are all kind of bland and boring, but other than that, it's okay. The story starts out with Peter being called by Jameson that there's a monster attacking the city and that he wants pictures of it. So Peter gets his Spider-Man costume on and heads to stop it. However, we find out that it is Morlun, one of the hunters, and he kills this Peter. However, we find out this is a world where Earth inhabited the moon. Meanwhile, we see some of the other hunters waiting in front of the Master Weaver. One of the brothers is impatient for their brother to return so they can hunt, but the woman says that he needs to be more patient, that he will have his time to hunt. When Morlun finally returns, his brother argues with him about why he can't go to Earth 616, knowing that his brother has claimed that Earth is his. After his brother leaves, he decides to go on that Earth anyway. What a mischievous little guy. I mean, just look at him. Then we cut to Peter, who's in bed, when Silk comes to give him a visit. You see Silk and Peter have this thing that whenever they're around each other, their animal instincts kick in and they want to have they want to jump on the bed. Naked. Anyway, because of this fact, Silk wants Peter to skip town and go to find a new city to protect while she takes care of this one. They end up going to stop a robbery while continuing to talk about the issue when the robbery gets interrupted by a bunch of Spider-Man from different universes. Hey, that's the Spider-Man from that one comic. And that's the Spider-Man from that other comic. And that's
2,000 years later.
Anyway, these different Spider-Men begin telling Peter that he is in serious danger because they can sense that Morlun's brother has faced before, which this book didn't show us for some reason, and I'm too poor to buy the digital edition of that book. Anyway, while this is happening, Morlun's brother has entered 616 and he is attacking and killing the Scarlet Spider. He realizes that this Spider-Man is special because he is the other, which the book clearly tells us that it will explain this later, but I want to know now. Anyway, before he can kill this Spider-Man, a bunch of Spider-Men, including an old Spider-Man and a Bruce Banner Spider-Man, who it explicitly states is not a Hulk, so now we know. As the Spider-Men begin to fight, we find out that Ben Reilly and Spider-Gwen are there. Hey, it's that Spider-Woman from that book I read. They're able to save the Scarlet Spider, but not at the loss of Bruce Banner Spider. Rest in peace, little dude. You may have never been a Hulk in that universe, but you're a Hulk in our hearts. Rest in peace. When they get back to the Earth where all the other Spider-Men are, Peter of 616 begins to ask questions when a cosmic Peter Parker shows up and tells them that on this Earth he can protect them with his cosmic powers that will keep the hunters away, but when he leaves this Earth, those powers go away. This is when he tells them that a war is coming against these hunters. Meanwhile, Miles is on Earth grieving his mother when one of the hunters comes to kill him. In the back issue, we see the family get together to eat some dinner. Of course, this dinner is of the dying spider people, but, I mean, I'm sure all families have those weird traditions, am I right? I'm right? Anyway, as the family waits for Morlun so they can eat, they look upon the Weaver and, hey, is that the Japanese Spider-Man? And the cartoon Spider-Man, cool. And a Hulk Spider-Man? Whoa. A werewolf Spider-Man.
2,000 years later.
When Morlun finally shows up with his dinner, he finds out his brother went to 616, and Morlun is furious, and they both begin to fight until the father stops them. He tells them that he knew the location of the Other, the Bride, and the Scion. I'm sorry if I butchered that name, which the book has yet to tell us what this means. I'm really anticipating the answer, which is why they need to give it to me now! Anyway, he says it doesn't matter because they are all just foods as they dig into their spider meal. The story intrigued me, and all the Spider-Men and Easter eggs are super fun and interesting to look for and point out. Let's hope this storyline only gets better from here. I absolutely love this cover. The realism of it just makes Superior Spider-Man pop even more. But the most interesting part is we haven't seen Superior Spider-Man in this series yet, so it leaves me intrigued to how they are going to introduce him. The story starts out with Miles being attacked by one of the Hunters. This is until Spider-Punk and Superior Spider-Man show up to save them. He tells them to get spidered up and get moving. Meanwhile, with all the Spider-Men, they are trying to figure out their next move. Silk awkwardly walks around seeing if she has the same jumping up and down on the bed naked with the other Spider-Men. It has no importance to the story, but I wanted to make that joke again. You're welcome. So stupid. The Spider-Men say they have detected a second team that has been bringing a bunch of Spider-Men to one place. They say this is dangerous for them and they plan to bring them here. They end up getting a team together to go, but Silk is told she can't. So you know what she does? She goes anyway. Look at you, you little mischievous little bugger, you. When they get there, Superior, I'm just going to call him Superior from now on so there's no more confusion and I don't have to say so many words so my brain doesn't turn to mush, even though I added even more words by writing in this explanation in the first place. Anyway, Superior explains that he has made a cloaking device to stop the Hunters from tracking them. However, the cloaking device doesn't work on spider totems that are unique to their universe, like the Scarlet Spider, who is the other, and Silk, who is the bride. Also, Superior Spider-Man and Peter from 616 are both here because they are from different times, and because of that it caused a whole big timey-wimey weird thingy that makes my brain hurt when I think about it. Oh yeah, by the way, one of the Hunters has tracked them down due to Silk coming with them to this Earth. So they get in a big fight that ends with him killing the Hunter. When old Spider-Man is about to speak and explain things, the same Hunter comes out of a portal, cracking his neck. They find out that Hunters can clone their bodies, and everyone runs off into their own spin-off comics of this series. Meanwhile, the rest of the characters head back to the original safe world, where Superior proudly proclaims that he is now in charge. I love this issue even more. It gave us more spider hijinks and battling of all these different Spider-Men. I don't really like that everyone left the comic to go do their own spin-off comic, but I guess that depends on how good those issues end up becoming. I might make a spin-off version of this video where I go over those. Also, I haven't mentioned the art, but it is absolutely gorgeous. One last thing that I would hope we get to see more of is the multiverse, because so far we've only seen bland ones or worlds we've already seen in other issues. But let's see what the future has to offer us. This isn't the best cover we've seen from the main series, but I still do enjoy it more than the Prelude comic, especially since it gives us an interesting teaser into the story itself. The story starts out with 616 Peter declaring that Superior is not in charge, but he is. This causes Superior to start fighting 616 Peter over this. Superior's downfall is thinking that this is an earlier version of Peter because he doesn't think he could possibly lose. So Peter gives him the chance to kill him, but Superior knows he can't since he's an earlier version of him, so he gets defeated. Meanwhile, the father of all the Hunters is standing near the Weaver, sending his exiled son to new challenges for killing his wife. Dang, talk about a real grounding. Then the father and Moreland begin to talk about the prophecy and how the 3 special Spider-Men could end up being their downfall. The father explains that this is ridiculous and decides to go retrieve one of these special Spider-Men himself. While this is happening, back in the safe zone, we find out that Spider-Man is coming up with a plan. He tells Gwen and Anya to track down the Hunters in their own spin-off. Also, I just saw that they are called Inheritors, but I don't really care. I'm just gonna continue calling them Hunters. Then he sends Miles and the Ultimate Spider-Man from the cartoon to hunt down more Spider-Men in their own spin-off comic. Also, Peter leaves. I looked over the book a couple times and can't find where he was supposed to be going, but he leaves. After everyone leaves, everything falls apart as the father of the Hunter arrives with Moreland and the scientist Hunter. They massacre everything and even kill the Cosmic Spider-Man as Moreland steals Mayday's brother, declaring that he is the Scion. I like this issue, but especially this one. It feels like they're just setting up side story after side story for more money, and the story doesn't really progress that much. Other than that, I'm excited to see where this goes. my favorite cover of the main series so far, but I do enjoy what it is going for here, with all the different spider heads at the top being interesting to look at. However, we have seen the hunters many times so far, so there really isn't anything interesting going on here. Let's hope the story makes up for this underwhelming cover. The story starts out with the father and Moreland having Mayday's sister. Moreland runs back to his dimension with Mayday's sister, leaving only Moreland's father in the safe zone. It does seem like everything is lost until we see that Spider-Man has come back with Japanese Spider-Man! Oh, let's go! That's my man right there! Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, woo! He comes out of the portal with his Glant robot and starts to fight the father. This gives the Spider-Man the perfect chance to escape by jumping through the portal. Meanwhile, Silk, who's been running from the hunters in her own side comic, anyway, she lands on an Earth that is radioactive and it hurts her, but it seems to hurt the hunters more. Anyway, all the Spider-Men land on a randomized Earth to avoid detection from the other hunters. Then Spider-Man begins trying to figure out what is happening in the side comics as to make you buy them more. Anyway, the only important one is Spider-Woman, as the Great Weaver calls out to her. But that gets blocked as we find out that the hunters have been spying on these phone calls like Discord mods at 3 a.m. When did I write that? They send a hunter after all of them as they begin to fight them. Meanwhile, Spider-Woman is still talking to the Weaver when he says he weaved the web so she would be able to meet her and give her this as he hands her 2 scrolls. She almost gets caught with the scrolls, but is able to transport them to Spider-Man using her transporter. He receives them, then gets a message from Silk telling him of the Earth where the hunters can't go. So he heads to that Earth with all the Spider-Men. When they get there, they realize that they can't stay here, but see Silk's signs and starts to follow them. It leads to a bunker where he enters with Silk waiting with none other than Uncle Ben. Wait! Uncle Ben's supposed to be dead. What you huh? I'm starting to realize that these main Spiderverse comics are like 40% story and then 60% of an ad to get all the side comics, so they can make more money, and honestly, I'm getting tired of it. I hope we get less of this in the next issue, but the main story stuff is still intriguing, at least. I just wish it had more of a direction. I don't know, it feels all over the place.
I buried Aunt May, my wife and I split up, but I handled it like a champion.
Yeah, this cover is awesome. Seeing that big battle with the Spider-Man running towards makes for a really awesome cover. Let's hope the story is of the same quality. The story starts out with the hunters having failed in stopping someone in the side comics, such as them destroying the cloning facility and letting the bride get away. The father tells them this is the end of this fight because they are going to track down the other 2 spider totems and get rid of them for good. Meanwhile, back with 616 Peter, he asked how is his Uncle Ben the spider totem of this world. Ben then tells them that he was bit by the spider instead of Peter and became Spider-Man for a while. This is until a variation of the Green Goblin finds out his secret identity and kills his family. One day, a businessman tells him that Moreland is coming for him, and that he needs to hide in this bunker. While this is happening, Doc Ock holds the world hostage with nuclear weapons. But when this weapon malfunctions, the entire Earth is destroyed with Ben as the only survivor. He says that he may have been able to save the world, but he had to give it up a long time ago. I feel that, man. That's relatable. Spider-Man, repulsed by this based version of Uncle Ben, tries to move on and figure out a plan. They begin to look at the scroll but see no way of translating it. While this is happening, Silk feels bad for getting Spider-Woman stuck on Loom World due to something that happened in a side comic. Because why would I want important story details to be in the story? Anyway, she and Spider-Gwen both decide to go save her. Which, have you noticed that a lot of the characters from Spider-Verse are not in the story as much? It's almost like the Spider-Verse movie took the most visually pleasing characters and made an actually interesting and not convoluted story with thousands of side comics to explain itself. But I don't know, that's just a theory. A game theory. Anyway, Superior gets frustrated by all the other Spider-Men being inferior and decides to use his hologram to scan the results. 616 Peter notices that it is based on someone he knows, and this gives Superior the idea that this is a future version of himself and that he is eventually defeated. After this, we find out Anya can read the scroll for no other reason than it's convenient. Why add the aspect of not being able to read it if you fix that 3 seconds later? That doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, we find out that in one of the side stories, Ben and Riley died to destroy their cloning facility, and the Scarlet Spider, furious, heads to Loom World to kill the Hunters. The Hunters begin to realize that all the spider totems they need are here, and they go to stop them. Scarlet Spider ends up turning into some freaky spider monster and starts fighting the Hunter, with him being able to kill the father. However, Moreland is able to subdue the creature so they can perform the ritual. While this is happening, Silk and Spider-Woman start getting attacked by one of the Hunters. Spider-Man tries to convince Uncle Ben to help them and become Spider-Man once more, but he's given up on everything and can't take one more loss. This is until Superior tells him that he loses all the time, but he always gets back up and becomes stronger, which shows real character growth for the character. I really like this part. Anyway, this inspires Ben and they all head to Loom World for the final battle. Why did I say that like a freaking announcer at a freaking children's hockey game? And we got the little spiders over here, and we got the Hunters over here. Welcome to your 9th grade multiversal battle! This story has become majorly convoluted. Thankfully, this issue didn't have as many ads for the side comics. However, this comes with the problem of all the side comics converging with the main story, which, if you haven't followed the side comics, you don't understand half the story without using context clues. Let's hope the finale can turn this thing around and give us a legitimately great end to this story. Not really a fan of this cover. For this to be the big finale, you would expect the cover to be big and spectacular. No pun intended. But in this cover, the dirt makes the colors fall flat, while they have the Spider-Man small in the background, which makes them look of lesser quality. This cover just doesn't scream finale, but let's hope the story can do the opposite. The story starts out with Spider-Woman and Spider-Gwen in trouble, but this is when 616 Peter and the rest of his army arrive. They end up stopping them, and Spider-Woman explains that they took Silk so they could perform their ritual that will destroy all spiders' totems across the multiverse. Meanwhile, the Hunters begin to perform the ritual, taking the blood of Cain and pouring it onto the Weaver's web. Which, by the way, the Weaver has been majorly unexplained in this comic. I mean, I guess they may get into it more in the side comics, but if I were just a casual reader, like how I currently am reading this, he is just majorly underplayed in this story. Anyway, all the Hunters begin to converge on the Spider-Man to protect the ritual, but help has arrived with Miles. While this is going on, Moreland continues the ritual by putting Silk's blood on the web, causing it to start to degrade. Finally, he goes up to the baby totem and is about to stab its blood onto the web and complete the ritual. But Spider-Man webs the knife out of his hand. The Hunters and the spiders begin to fight when Uncle Ben's Spider-Man seems to run away through a portal. Also, remember that one Hunter who had the really sad backstory where he's forced to wear a helmet that was welded to his head? Well, guess what? Now he's a good guy. Do you want to know why that is? It's because it happened in a side comic. This big reveal wasn't set up in the main comic, but rather in a side comic. Because we all have to be in pain and suffering all the time. That was a little bit of an over-exaggeration. This is a Spider-Man comic. I'm not in actual pain and suffering. That was just for over-dramatic. After this, a naked pig attacks Moreland and tells him that Uncle Ben isn't a coward, but rather ran away with the baby that was the last part of the ritual. After this, the giant Japanese Spider-Man robot, which looks really cool. That's all I have to say about that. Anyway, after this, Superior decides that he's going to kill the Weaver. This has no plot significance, and I assume it's meant to set up the sequel, but don't quote me on that because I haven't read the sequel yet. Hello, future Micah here. That is actually set up in the Aftermath comic. See, at this time, past Micah did not realize that there wasn't a Aftermath issue to this. He thought this was the last issue to the whole thing. He did not realize that there was one in the next issue, which is why he's a big dummy. Hey, why are you talking about me that way? I'm future Mike. You can't talk to me. I can talk to you however I want. I'm past Mike. I can do whatever I want to you. No, you can't. Oh yeah, well I'm just gonna find you. Then Mayday Parker decides not to kill the hunter's father. Honestly, I forgot she was in this story because this comic does not do a good job of keeping up with its character. Moreland jumps onto 616 Peter and begins killing him. However, one of the Spider-Men opens a portal to the radioactive planet and traps Moreland there. After getting Peter off that world, they force all the other hunters to live the rest of their days on this Earth. Peter then proclaims that he's tired. That's all I say about that. I don't give any Peter then proclaims that he is tired. Yeah, we all are, Peter. We're all Peter, too. This is definitely better than the last issue in terms of confusion. It did seem like most plot points happened within the story. However, once again, there were plot points from the side comics coming into this issue, expecting you to understand what had been going on in the side comics, and this just makes you lose your investment in the story. Also, it feels like this story can't pick a certain amount of characters for us to follow and invest in, and that causes us to lose the emotional ties to certain characters like Mayday Parker, who had barely any relevance throughout the whole story. Then we were supposed to be invested when she doesn't kill this guy. It's just a confusing, clunky mess.
Just told you that. Listen, I'm from the future.
How dare you point at me?
You were pointing first.
Rude to point.
You're being very rude. You're not even believing what I'm saying.
Which one pointed first?
Spider-Man pointed first, obviously.
You're pointing at me right now as you say that. Look at you.
I'm
Look
just
at your
pointing
finger.
at your pointing.
Look at your finger right
Different
now.
than
What is
normal
it doing?
pointing.
You are pointing
You
at
haven't
me.
seen
You're
pointing
accusing
until I
me
get
of
through with
pointing
you, and then
while
you'll
you're...
know.
I like this cover. It's simple, but it's perfectly fine for an Aftermath issue, and it looks pretty cool otherwise. It's definitely better than what Batman does with him just standing on a building after a big event. The story starts out with all the Spider-Men heading home. We get to see Mayday Parker head home to her universe where her brother is. When she gets there, she finds out that her mom and boyfriend are both alive, and that Uncle Ben has decided to stay in their universe as a grandfather. This is actually a sweet part that gives them both satisfying character conclusions. Meanwhile, back with the other Spider-Men, they are continuing to send everybody home when all of their spider senses go off at once. This is because Superior is cutting the web of reality, which can't be fixed because of the Weaver being dead. That kind of makes it hard to do your job when you're dead. He says that he is cutting the web to stop his destiny of eventually dying and letting Parker take his body back. All the 616 Spider-Men decide to stay and stop him, so the others have a chance to go home. Also, this lady named Julia Carpenter wakes up from a coma and talks about the end of reality because of what Superior is doing. This wasn't set up at all. So it just leaves confusion for the casual reader of this comic. I don't know who this is. Who's this lady? Why does it say she's Madam Web? What does that mean? Explain. They begin to see writing of the Weaver on the knife that Superior is using to cut the web. The knife says that there must always be a Weaver and one of them can take the place of the Weaver, but it is a lifetime position. They end up taking off the mask of the Weaver only to find out that it is no one they know. However, the good hunter realizes that this is him, and decides that he must take the place of the Weaver. With his new Weaver powers, he sends Superior back home with no memory of what had happened in the multiverse. Spider UK finds out his universe has been destroyed due to incursions, which is something meant to set up a completely different event, but basically, Spider UK is now a protector of the universe now. And so is this girl I forgot the name of. I'm proud of you, I'm very happy for you, and do I get a raise for saying this? I'm very poor. Then, of course, Spider-Man and the rest of the Spider-Men head back to 161? Was that what I was about to say? Then, of course, Spider-Man and the rest of the Spider-Men head back to 16... I said 161! Why do I keep saying that? Then, of course, Spider-Man and the rest of the Spider-Men head back to 616. I actually really love this story. Even though the main series kind of forgot about most of the characters it had set up in the prequel comics, I felt like a lot of those plot lines were fulfilled in some pretty cool ways that allowed for everything to tie up nicely. However, nice wrapping doesn't really help a messy gift. But we'll talk more about that in the...
Ending your essay with "in conclusion" is bland, overused, and predictable. Ending your essay with "and them's the facts" is compelling, unexpected and confirms that those are, indeed, the facts.
The Spiderverse comics are a series that I think was way overhyped. We can see that from the Edge of Spiderverse comics that they were going to have all these cool and interesting characters with intriguing backstories. Then we got to see the series slowly be hyped up through back issues and whole series covering the event. However, when we finally got to the main event, instead of feeling like a linear and coherent story with a set of intriguing characters, we instead got this advertisement for other side comics that just left the casual reader confused and feeling like the most intriguing characters were abandoned in order to make more money. Even though some of the characters got proper and well thought out conclusions, there was no journey to get there, and because of that, it felt wasted. I came here looking for an intriguing story, and instead of that, I got an ad to a bunch of side adventures with a few story beats throughout it. It started out strong and it ended strong, but with the middle being so weighed down with problems, it just breaks the whole bridge apart. Dang, that was a good metaphor. So smart. Honestly, I probably won't make a video on the side comics unless this video becomes popular enough. Another thing, I know I have been writing on the side comics, but their strategy clearly worked enough for them to make a sequel, Spider-Geddon, which I may cover on the channel one day. Anyway, I wanted to end this video looking towards the future of the Spider-Verse because I have legitimate fear towards it. With the new Spider-Verse movie looking more like this comic, it makes me fear that this sequel may lose the simplicity of the first movie for the sake of a quick and easy cash grab. I know I have no authority of saying that, considering this whole video idea was based on me trying to get hype from the new movie coming out. But you can't stop me!